It's a big comfort for us to have Rav Lopiansky come and speak to us during these very busy days between Sukkot and Yom.
Yes.
Yashikaya.
Okay, it's wonderful to be here, to be able to learn a little bit with Olam. Rav Hutner used to say that standing is a speech and sitting is learning. So since I haven't done much learning yet this morning, I don't feel comfortable to say a speech. We can sit and learn together. That we can do together for sure. I'd like to shtickle on Sukkos. It's from Sifsei Chaim. Sifsei Chaim is Reb Chaim Friedlander. Reb Chaim Friedlander was from Rav Dessler's big Talmidim in Eretz Yisrael. Reb Chaim Friedlander was born in Germany, but they came to Israel just basically when he was a baby, right with the war. He was a big Talmud of Rav Dessler. He had a tremendous yad in the Ramchal and his Sfarim, Kabbalah part of it. He helped put out a lot of Sfarim, got a lot of Sfarim put out. It was a big yad in it. He unfortunately was nifta young in 1986. He was probably 63 or something like that at that age. Was Chaval Dovdim because he had a tremendous ability to give out the inyanim in a way that Shavel Chol Nefesh, like Rav Dessler did. Rav Dessler also in Kelm, they had him service to learn Ramchal's Sfarim, even the Kabbalah's Sfarim, and so on. And he had the ability to give it out. And his Sfarim are taking ideas and translating them into language that are understandable and so on. So you know that the ideas are emes, they come from the shoshim of Torah, and yet you're able to assimilate it, you're able to make sense of it. So here's a shtickli on Sukkos, on a particular angle of Sukkos. We'll start with it. There's a Chazal, and we'll talk. Besukkos teishu shivas yamim, leman yedidor asechen ki besukkos eshavter v'stei Yisrael boitzios eretz Mitzrayim. So there's a Chazal go through different reasons for the time for Sukkos. Rav Bullman mentions a very busy time, like to stick it in together, Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. So a lot of Chazal and why it is like that. The following is another Chazal. Nema bepsikra of Kahana, bepsikra achrisir Sukkos, be'osbecha migornech miyikvecha. Omer Ablozer Morin, lama ana oisim Sukkach Yom Kippur, loy melacha, shekein at moitzer sheshana shekadosh baruch hu b'y olam. Yom Kippur is chaysim sadin. Shema yotza dinim sheisol legolus, v'adei kein oisim sukkah v'goylem ibateim lesukkah v'kadosh baruch hu malalem kilogol lebavel. So there's an inyan of a kapara of golus. So the inyan of sukkah is something that carries in itself an element of possible golus, which is one of the ifane kapara. Nov and Nod by Kayin was already Golus was a kapara. You find Golus in Eretz B'Shoigeg and so on. So Sukkos, the tircha of wandering out of your house, carries in itself the element of Golus as a kapara. So the question is, what? So Adam Gan Eden was more that he doesn't belong in Gan Eden. In other words, it was hafkor from Gan Eden. It's one thing when you have to, there's one thing when you're moving from a very nice house to a small, schlacky, whatever room. There's also the idea that you just, even if you go to a hotel that's 5-star, if you're in Gullus. I knew somebody many years ago who was involved in some sort of struggle with an organization he worked for, whatever it was, he had a fallout, and they ended up putting him up in a very fancy hotel. They fired him his job, and he was there for a year, and he was ois mensch because not having a home. So there's the one Indian of going to a nice home like out of Gan Eden to someplace else. Not having a home and being stuck, even if it's fancy, if it's not your place, it's gullus. So he's going to try to understand what avera we're talking about and what's the Indian of where's the gullus, the mechapa, and so on. This he's going to discuss. Okay, so he brings, I'm going to skim through this next paragraph. He brings the Inyan of Tshuva, he brings from Rabbeinu Yoina, ha'ikar shvi, ha'kniya b'chol lev v'shiflus. That kniya, hachna, is one of the elements of tshuva. Rabbeinu Yonah is quite famous. Rabbeinu Yonah. I want to talk a little bit about it and understand it. So, it seems intuitive, yes, and a lot of the nuyim that we have in Yom Kippur, you're muchazach, you don't eat, you're standing the whole time, and so it sort of is meilit a certain a person sort of feels disposed towards tshuva. I want to try to explain why. Every aveira is defined by an interaction between two entities. You told me not to do it, and I did it. I did it, and you're upset with it, and so on. In other words, every bad, wrong is an interaction. If I am strong with myself, so l'mashal, in my relationship as a parent to a child, as a teacher to a student, and so on, I tend to be confident with myself, and therefore I'm not easily given to apologize. I'm not easily given to think I made a mistake. The relationship is in the nature of where I feel very comfortable and confident with myself. And you did wrong. I can try to be advise a little bit, but I'm not going to admit so quickly that I did wrong. Every person, klap HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when a person feels very confident with himself, very comfortable with himself, is not easily given to tshuva. An example, famous by Bar Kochva, when he told Rebbeinu Shalom, he said, "You just stay out of the way. I'll take care of it myself. I don't need you to help me. I just need you to not go against me." That was the beginning of the end, or that was the end in a certain sense. In other words, to be makir in chet requires a person understand himself vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's always that personal element. If a person feels good and smug about himself, then tshuva doesn't come easy. If a person feels broken and a person feels humbled, then he begins to own up to averos and so on. So anything that affects a person's sense of self and self-confidence helps him move towards tshuva. So the hachna that's a prerequisite for tshuva includes that sense of once I break myself, it's a zivcha lekim ruach nishbara leiv nidbar neiv nishbar v'nitke lekim leisibzeh. So anytime a person approaches HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a sense of being broken, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is more likely to accept this tshuva because it's genuine. A person understands that, so even if a person recognizes that he did an aveira objectively and knows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can punish you, but if you don't have that sense of being broken, humbled, your charot is not genuine. So achna is a prerequisite for that. Last paragraph here. Echad ha'etzis like boris ha'kniya he agolas. Ki kol zman sh'adam b'mekoymoi koshav ha'kniya. Ach k'shegoylo mibeisei u'mavz ha'modoi chosh u'mavz ha'kniya. Let's talk about this point because this point is really the important point over here. The Maral says that a place is not only a mikritical location. In other words, a place goes into defining the person himself. It's a reason that he says why by a get, you need to have the place of the person. In a regular shtar, when you write, I lent money from so-and-so, or I bought this house from so-and-so, it's just a question of Bezdin identifying the parties. It's not a document that Be'etzim does something, and therefore, as long as Bezdin knows who Reuven ben Yaakov is, it's good enough. I don't need to write addresses unless it needs to help identify the person, but I don't Be'etzim need it. In a shtar gerushin, in a get, writing the place is of paramount importance, and a lot of the problems with gittin is writing the places. That becomes the issue. when they stopped writing Gittin in Washington, D.C. and started writing in Silver Spring, being able to write the name correctly, and there are all different elements, which river it's on and so on, became a critical piece. I was involved in writing the letters to Reb Nissim Karelitz and someone else in Eretz Yisrael, two big rabbanim, to give their opinion about how to write the name. So Morel says, because to truly define a person, you need to have the makom. And in a get, because it's a shtar, it's a document that in an essential way cuts the gerushin. It's not just an agreement. I agree that I'm selling you the house. You gave me the money. I gave you the house. So I don't, all it is proof. But a get is something that somehow creates that, it cuts that relationship in a way that's essential. And that's something that can only be done when you have the person defined to his essence, which is the place. You find the Mashal Rashi says in Shlach, Yesh Eretz Migadelas Giborim, Eretz Migadelas Chaloshim. There are countries, there are locations that breed strong people, locations breed weak people, and because each makom has a certain, it has certain skula to it, and it creates a certain type of person. So for a person, location is extremely important. The Gemara says, for instance, that Yordayam, that sailors who sail, they don't have Yishva Das till they don't land on earth, on solid earth. It's a solid land. So you can be in a top line cruise ship, where it costs tens of thousands of dollars, and you're not b'yishuv das. You land and you come to a simple apartment, and all of a sudden you have yishuv das, because that's the nature of a person. If there's no makom, there's no yishuv das. So as water is mufka from a makom, it's just not a place. It's placeless. You can't stand in any one place. So people, even if the accommodations are phenomenal and there's no physical problems, there's no makom, and a person has no yishva das. When you're on land, you have yishva das. So being on land and having your own makom is something which gives you yishva das, gives you metzias. The Chenkas of Rambam, second page, midarke atshuva begoyle mimekoymoi. Someone writes, one of the methods used for a person to do tshuva is to go from place to place, and because it causes a person to feel humbled. A lot of stories. The Goyen went in Golos for a tkufa. He went from town to town. It was part of a certain tikkun. And the tikkun is because it makes a person, it takes away a person's sense of self and self-confidence if he doesn't have a place that's his. If he has to keep going from place to place, it takes away from a person's sense of self-confidence and so on. Okay, so now he says there is actually two positive elements in that sense of wandering. One, a person has a sense that he himself, there's no entitlement. It's not my land and my place, and essentially it's, I'm not entitled. Beis. That everything he has is matna shemayim. I want to segue a minute to something I think is an important aside. What he's saying here is that your sense of not having a place is on first step is something that is very difficult. It means that the person loses a sense of self and place. He loses his foothold. He also gains a sense of Chaste Shemayim, which means that the person is be'etzem b'yadav of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to talk about something about Zionism and explain what the fine difference was between where there was a mistake and where there was an emes. That Klal Yisrael belongs to Eretz Yisrael is so axiomatic that it doesn't need to be spoken about. No one can deny that. From Bereshis, that starts the first Rashi about the reason why it starts with Bereshis is so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Eretz Yisrael, no one can list until the end. So that is as push as possible. What's not understood is the distinction of what Bulgaria is to Bulgarian and what Eretz Yisrael is to us. Umm Yisraelim are in a lower madrega, and just like zebras thrive in the jungle in Africa, a Bulgarian thrives in Bulgaria, and a Frenchman thrives in France. That's his makom, and just like there are plants that are native to a certain place. Like we said before, every place has its school and so on and so forth. Klal Yisrael is mufka from that, and Klal Yisrael is Hashem unachlasai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's arms. Now, that is the feeling we're supposed to have when we're in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael our relationship to Yisrael is supposed to carry in itself the same sense of we're on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wings as to another person, to a Frenchman, France as just being a kind of natural place. It's a very different Agasha. So to look at Eretz Yisrael as being the same to us as France is to Frenchman is not getting what Eretz Yisrael is. Eretz Yisrael is a place of hashkacha, which means part of being in your place is a sense of status quo. We're here, we've been plowing this land, we've been planting potatoes, we've been harvesting potatoes, we will harvest potatoes, and that's it. Us, the land, the potatoes, and status quo. Mashahoya, Mashayia. Eretz Yisrael is a place of hashkacha, which means every year we have to justify our being there. And when we justify our being there, we're in a very different madrega. We're on Kalfin Sharm. We're in B'yarav Shakadosh Baruch Hu. It's a very different sense of it. So the golus that's mechaper, the golus that we talk about. So many terrible things have happened when we've been in golus, but the overriding factor is our just not being in our place, which causes us to realize we don't have a place. We have only one place, and that's B'yarav HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It just shows where that happens. But our place is that. There's I once read many years ago, it must have been in the 60s, someone wrote a book about guerrilla warfare and when it's effective, when it's ineffective, and so on. I don't guess it actually stays with you, I guess. I don't know. But there was a very his point, I think it was called The War to Flee, and I think was mandatory reading for army officers. This was at a time when many guerrilla organizations were winning. And his point was that a very crucial part of winning is that the native population has to want these guerrilla people, and they have to feel they're at home. In other words, he pointed, I think, 2 wars that weren't effective, and he said, Kolzman, that the people, this is their place. You can kill them, you can harm them, but you can't take over. As long as it's not your place and it's their place, you're like Afghanistan, we just saw the same thing. So Klal Yisrael going into Gullus, the first and foremost, we've been prey because we have no makom, and Eretz Yisrael is not the makom. Hashem is the makom. Hashem chose Eretz Yisrael. It's there because this is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us and wants us to be. But understanding that it's not for granted, And just being in that place without a Kadosh Baruch Hu is not going to do it for us. So two things come out when a person goes to Golas. One, a certain sense of personal achnoah, and two, a sense of whatever he does have, the mokum he has, or whatever he has, is not Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he brings a very interesting parallel. He says, "K'moshen maskim b'tefillah, Rebbeinu Olam lo tzitz kaseinu chupir d'anefecha k'recha rabim, me'onu mechayenu mechasei mitzitkenu alu kol haborim kayim fanecha Hashem k'lehoyacham v'limado, v'achar kach mamshichim aval anachnu amcha b'nei b'secha me'abarim afcha Hashem al tev chalkeinu." So yesh lo havin. So we said we're nothing, we're nobody, nothing. But we're great people. Like somebody once wrote, somebody wrote a sefer on Baba Kama, and he said in his akdama, this is many years ago, I don't remember, unfortunately, it's because I'm looking for it. He writes, I'm not writing akdama. Why? Because there's a standard formula for akdamas. It starts with, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, killer hoya, and it ends with a sefer like this Baba Kama has never before been written. That's the usual. So he said, I don't believe I'm a nothing. I don't believe a sefer like this hasn't been written. So I have nothing to write nakdam. I can't write the anachnu, and I don't have either one I can write. So I understand we say we're nothing, nobody. Aval, wow, we're amazing. So what does that mean? Onu im kol ma loiseinu poloseinu akol hevel. HaChachma gur eina meitonu. Ze atzayus hakniya. V'achar kach onu mosif atzay hasheni. V'ma sheish bonu, hakol meis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avol anach namcho meisem HaShem HaViyah. In other words, the one leads to the other. Kol Yisrael is mitzidenu, mitzad atzmeinu. We don't have anything. But what we do have is all HaKadosh Baruch Hu's. It's like, Lamosha, if I want to thank somebody for something, so it requires two parts. I want to tell them, without your help, I have nothing, and I would be nowhere. With your help, Baruch Hashem, I'm settled, I'm doing well, and I'm successful, and so on and so forth. So the Hachna brings out in a person the second half of it, that a person is a Ben Maila because of it. Let's see the last paragraph. Simchas Asif. So now let's go back to Sukkos. Chag Sukkos think of a Torah Chag Asif. Mevaya Chinuch she'Asif ba'asiba zon sich basenu. V'zel shein lefi she'imei Chag imei Simcha Gdol Yisrael. Ku eis Asifas atvu aperes ilan bayis. V'az yismuchu b'nei Adam Simcha Rabba. Neke nikar Chag Asif. V'tziva kela amol asis Chag b'yisa'es lizakoisam lias ika Simcha lishmoi. So Asif is the time when a person feels strongest about how wealthy he is, how fortunate, how wealthy he is. What for us is money in the bank, in those days, it was wheat in the silo. So a person has worked very hard for almost a year. And finally, this is the moment, this is his wealthiest moment, his high point. From this point onwards, the rest of the winter, he's just using up the stock that he has. So he doesn't have that sense. Right now, the silo is bursting with crops. Our bank account is bursting with money. That's what's happening at this moment, Chagas. So it's an incredible moment of having, and it's something which, on the one hand, can cause a person to feel smug about himself. The opposite of kniya is something which is a sense of self entitlement, status quo. So the Torah the Torah juxtaposed Yom Kippur, which is a very ruchnistic time, kol ruchnis, with this Chag Asif, which it's the moment when a person feels the least inclined to be ruchni. I feel very good about myself. Feel very full of myself. So the Torah bids us to go out into the simplest accommodation. The word psoilas goyim v'yakev means the junk that the farmer throws away. In other words, the grain that I have, the kernels of wheat that I have in my silo is my wealth. And that makes me feel who I am. The stuff that I get rid of, I can't get rid of quickly enough. There's halachas about when you winnow the stuff, it's mazik other people and raksa and so on. It's stuff you're trying to get rid of and you don't know where to get rid of it. So the Torah said this becomes your makom dira. Pseilas gerim v'yakev. Yes, we learn from it halachas about gedulei karka and so on, but it's called pseilas gerim v'yakev be'asa ganach hamikvecha from the junk. Kidei ligboya benafshenu shelo gerim v'yakev shenoseim chonshanleim is a machse. Like a pseilas she'enu yachso kol shibus v'raki titan as a machse she'nechse betzila shakadosh baruch hu v'namin boy. I want to add something apropos to this, similar apropos. When the Moshiach of Klal Yisrael, the one that will eventually be Goyal Klal Yisrael, and is the one that's Mashlin, the Gula, and the Merkav, and every possible, is David HaMelech. So Chazal speak, the Arizal speaks about how it is that David HaMelech comes from the lowest parts of from all the difficult moments, whether it was Tamar, whether it was Rus, and so on. And he speaks about that the Satan tries very hard to eliminate any possible Geula for Klal Yisrael, and this is sort of sneaking in the back door. No one could think that in the Ma'aseh Tamar there would be something like that. No one could think of Moab and Rus and all these places. This is where the Goyal should be born. That's how he talks about it, and it's quite famous. There's another Nakuda. It says that when Shmuel came to look for who be the next Melech, he was told Yishai has a son that's suitable. Yishai was a very chashuv person. It says Yishai was one of 4 people who died without Averis. So Yishai is very chashuv. Today they would even say as Ruach HaKodesh. I'm sure that nobody would not believe as Ruach HaKodesh. And Shmuel came and he said, Rabbi Yishai, I've got good news for you. One of your 7 sons is Melech Yisrael. And he tried out his oldest son, and Akash Baruch Hu said, nice, not him, not him, not him, not him. And the one, and David HaMelech, who he didn't think was much of anything, that's, Shmuel had to ask him, tell me, you sure you've got everybody? So there's another kid out there hanging out with the sheep, call him in, and he's the one. What's the pshat in that? I think the pshat in that is, it means that it's mufka, it's clearly kol kuloi ruach Hashem. It's clearly, whatever we feel comfortable about means it's something that's coming because, yeah, we can rely on him. He's somebody we can rely on. I see it as that, that means that Kadosh Baruch Hu is out of the picture in a certain sense. And obviously, we're talking about very high people. In order for it to be totally, the Melech is the means for bringing a Kadosh Baruch Hu and his Anhaga into Klal Yisrael. And had the Melech himself been subscribed to as someone who is chashiv and so on, it takes away. So people sort of, it's the Melech. In this sense that we didn't understand, David HaMelech was kol kol batal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We didn't have that sense. That could be helpful for this. Masham da Melech Shamaz Hashem Hashem levabayis shavam b'nei Hashem she'ir shav shagat shema shabachem mashkimei kum machesheves and so on. And the Ebenezer says, "Ken yitin Hashem aniska l'mayla la'oyav v'sheina derech mesukas ha'ovid v'hinei atam ka'kol nigzem hashamayim u'lekol yitin Hashem kashegoza u'loikim machsheves adam rutzasai v'yigosav tapoloisav." So there's a sense of relying kuloi on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zui agolos shasuka. There's the Brisker Rav, when he got married, was given Naden a block of houses in Warsaw, and he would live off the rent. Somewhere, either someone cheated him out of it, or he lost it. Whatever it was, he lost it. Years later, he said, people think that a sure source of income, a comfortable sure source of income, is a row of houses in Warsaw. And the emes is, Sha'ar B'tochen Chayvus Alvavis is a sure source of parnasa. That's a comfortable, reliable source, something along those lines. In other words, you have to be mafkia from Klal Yisrael, the idea that it's the Goren and Yekev, and understand that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it can come through the Pselos also. When we're in the sukkah, the only thing that we can sense is the sukkah is not protection. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing more to the sukkah. It's the cheapest, lightest thing. It's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lehake kol ma shezechina l'asik l'asik l'Torah b'Yom Kippur hakol mata shemayim. Uma shekosov b'psik teshven el sheyeshiva suki b'mkoim golus yitochen lefarishim onu b'matzav zeh sheshosh chateinu chisoron hakniya. That's where we're misaking it with this. So basically, the golus is a tikkun for this type of issue. Yeah.
It seems like it's strange, right? The minute we go into sukkah, it's like bu'ula. Like golus usually means you're going away from the shekhinah.
So let's look at the next piece that he says. Hagoshas hakniya v'kadosh baruch hakosh gomes baruch he hamekoir hayochad l'simcha mitis ki kol zman shamatech b'koichoy miskayim boy v'asei v'lo shem yechli yishon mar v'chosem mar b'daiga. Let's talk about this point because this is a very important point. A person has different things that give comfort. I open up my bank book and I see I have a Baruch Hashem, a lot of resources, and I feel very, very comfortable with it. I go to the doctor for checkup and check. Everything is fantastic. It's wonderful, and so on. And v'chein hala. I have a nice house, comfortable, mortgage paid off. It's insurances on it, so on and so forth. Down deep, I know that nothing is assured. Down deep, something that bothers a person because he knows this, that, the other thing. And we know that nothing in this world has ever stood the test of time, and surprises abound. So the only thing that a person can be batuach in is something that is assured and always true. Now he adds a line here. To be b'teich HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't mean that I transfer, I have $1 million in my bank account. So you're right, if I trust the bank, maybe the bank will collapse, maybe the economy will collapse, maybe this will happen. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trusted, and we don't know if he gives interest on the accounts, but he definitely is trusted with the principal, and he'll be good. No, we don't trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there'll be money, that will be healthy, anything. We trust that what we need to be there will be there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. Maybe I need a rough spell to take out some of my deficiencies. Bitochen, and Chazon Ish makes this point constantly. Bitochen doesn't mean you project your fantasy on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means you rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's taking me here. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing it for my toelis. Who knows what toelis will be? But the more I have a sense of that, it's true whether I have a sense of it or not. But will I live it or not depends on what my sense is. So the real simcha of a person is when a person's sense is Ratzon Hashem. When a person is fixated on physical items and realities, there'll always be disappointment because nothing. People with there was somebody who had a heart condition and was nifter at a relative, what's today young age. This is many years ago. At the shiva, after the shiva, the family was listening to some of the messages on the phone, And one of the messages was from a cardiologist, and he said, Mr. So-and-so, great news for you. All of your tests came back perfect. Everything is A-okay. I'm serious. This was a true story. And it's true. You could, everything could be A-okay, and then it's not. And the same thing is true with money. I know somebody who is in finance business, and he was the olive to him was, hedging everything. And he never did a deal unless it was guaranteed and assured from every side possible. And he had finished dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's on a very great business deal. And he picked up, Monday morning or whatever it is, he picked up the phone and to call the finance company to send a check. They had contracted, they've been signed and sealed, it was every side. And the phone answers, Lehman Brothers phone is out of service. They had just collapsed. This was in 2008, whatever it was, and everything unraveled. Now, somebody to imagine it happening probably couldn't imagine. But again, there's nothing in the world physical that is guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is that Kadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha is there, and it's going for your benefit, and therefore it's moiled simcha. V'chein matzino etzel David HaMelech al Shalom. Shiur amal se David Hashem legava libi v'leiromu einai im lo shivisi v'deimamti nafshi kegomel imo kegolei nafshi. David HaMelech al Shalom metaras hagashosoi shaisa b'shivyon u'dmama v'mnuchas hanefesh. K'moitinek etzel imoi shemitzad echad ein asema klal kasmoi achas sheni ogua v'shav d'rimoi. David HaMelech, when he wants to portray his midas habitochen, he casts himself like a child in his mother's arms. There's a helplessness in the child. There's a lack of understanding what's happening. And yet there's a trust. A mother can be taking him to get an injection. A mother he could be choking, and a mother slaps him strongly to spit out the food. There are many different scenarios where the child doesn't understand, but has extraordinary trust in the mother. And then he brings the Chazal Yerushalmi here, legava libi b'shosha mashchani Shmuel, leromo eina b'shosha akdes Goliath, leachta b'gdolos b'shosha se'oren, u'v'thos meni b'shosha chseruni l'malchusi, elem lo yishabisam ki goma le'imoy ki goma le'nafshi, ki ben yinuka denochs me'imoy kenes nafshalai. So in all of these inyanim, David HaMelech felt it's Yad Hashem, it's Tzivui Hashem, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu working through me. So let's just sum up what he said. So Lamaisa, Yom Kippur, and I'm adding this piece, doesn't quite say it, but I think this is in it. Yom Kippur is a day when we're Kulal Hashem, and it's very easy to be kanua, because we're not eating, we're not drinking, we're not washing, we're completed to Hashem, and that a person says, I have nothing but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's very clear, and yes, it's true. But the day after, we're at the height of our physical success. Those fields are in, and our sense of well-being and confidence and relying on ourselves is at its strongest. And that's where we need to be able to bring in the basic element that's needed for tshuva into that world. And kniya is that the sense of lack of self is what we bring into it. So by leaving golus is in a sense uprooting a person's sense of self, uprooting a sense of confidence. What everyone knows, whenever you're traveling, you don't feel as confident when you come to another city, when you come to another country. You don't feel as comfortable and as confident because there's a lack of place and a lack of self. That's what happens when going to Sukkah. But if a person understands it correctly, that our Klal Yisrael's lack of self and place is not an end to itself. It's meant to breed in us a sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our makom, Hashem unachlosai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shevet Levi lived in the Tzeil of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They didn't have their own possession, but they have Chelik Hashem. When that feeling comes out, it's more in a person's tremendous sense of simcha, because no one can take it away from you. The Goyer and Yaakov we take away from you, everything can be taken away from you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't be taken away from you if you hold on. And no matter where we go with it, no matter what happens, if it's Kegomala Imoy, if we know that we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there for us, and whatever might be happening, it's there to change us, to make us into what we need to be, to correct what faults we have, and to give us challenges to bring out the best in us. So then a person knows it'll always be right. And as much as a person is masig and magish, that's a simcha. So on the one hand, at the first step of sukkah is a certain difficulty, and it's meant as a hachna, because galus is a difficult situation, and it's meant to be a chnia person. And in the end, it's something that brings out it brings a true simcha in a person when he understands that, simcha comes because a person has a sense of closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding on to him, and whatever's happening, it's hashgacha leading a person to bring out the best in himself. Okay, we should be zeichet to have, yeah. Because anything that happens all the time has almost no effect on us. That's the truth. It's things that happen at certain times have a profound effect on us. We get used to shutting out things that happen, constantly. So if you're in Kippur, what happened all the time, it wouldn't be. I remember when I was a young boy, I was in camp. Someone gave us a mussar shmuz with an eitzah, maybe from the breast of, I remember already, it's a long time ago, that if a person were to think that he's going to die soon, his Shemona Esrei would be something else. So I tried it, and that Shemona Esrei was awesome. The second Shemona Esrei was very good. The third one, at some point, dying wasn't so bad. And and Shemona Esrei reverted back to the old Shemona Esrei. That's the way things happen. That's the truth. You get used to everything. It's okay. Good.